have gathered here on the second day of Hiraka Mahotsav celebrations. We really had a very lively day yesterday with the national seminar on Ramayana and Ramayana traditions. We had wonderful scholarly papers presented in a lucid manner, and the participation of students and audience was just overwhelming. So we are here today on another day with a series of wonderful programs. Let us begin on an auspicious note with Mantra Pathana, for which I call upon Vishnu, who is our MA student.
Namo Namaha. Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Shri Saraswatyai Namaha, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Madi Yogeshwaraya Jnanavalkyacharyaya Namaha, Gananatha Saraswati, Ravi Shukra Brahaspati, Panchayeta Samsmare Nityam, Vedavanim pravartayet. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Jajjagrato duramudaiti devan tadu suptasya tathaivaiti durangamanjo Jyotire Kantan me manaha Shiva Sankalpamastu Jena Karmanya Paso Manikhino Jadne Kranvanti Vidathe Khodhiraha Jadapurvanjakshamantaha Prajanantan me manaha Shiva Sankalpamastu Jadapradnyanamuta cheto Dhritishtajyotirantaramritam Prajasu Jasmanna riche kincha karma kriyate tanme manaha Shiva sankalpamastu Jenedam bhutam bhuvana parikhya parigrhi tamamritena sarvam Jena jatnyastayate saptahota tanme manaha Shiva sankalpamastu Harihi Om. Namo Namaha.
Dhanyavad Vishnu. With this really auspicious beginning, with these good vibes around Shiva Sankalpa, we now proceed with the program. I call upon Head of the Department, Dr. Shakuntala Gowde, to give preamble and opening address.
Namo Namaha. Swagatam, Hardam Swagatam. Hiraka Mahotsavesmin, Samupagatebhyah, Vidvajjanebhyah, Hardam Swagatam. I welcome you all who have gathered here for Diamond Jubilee celebration of the Department of Sanskrit, University of Mumbai. This is really a moment of great pride and happiness for all of us. So I welcome all the scholars, students, alumni who have gathered here for 2 days, Hiraka Mahotsav, that is Diamond Jubilee celebration. We are organizing various programs throughout the year, like research methodology workshop, 60 lecture series on Indian knowledge systems, various seminars, and as a part of this 2-day Diamond Jubilee celebration, we are organizing national seminar on Ramayana and Ramayana traditions, Symposium on Sanskrit Studies in Maharashtra, and we will be felicitating our senior scholars, professors, and alumni as a token of gratitude. So now we start with the Symposium on Sanskrit Studies in Maharashtra, past, present, and future. We are very much grateful to Professor Srinivas Varkhedi sir, Vice Chancellor, Central Sanskrit University, who readily agreed to come for this function as a chief guest and also inspired us to organize such a symposium which will highlight a remarkable contribution of Maharashtra towards Sanskrit studies. And this symposium is organized by Department of Sanskrit in collaboration with Central Sanskrit University, New Delhi. So let me present a short preamble of this symposium. Maharashtra has a long tradition of Sanskrit scholarship, especially in the medieval period. The Maratha regime witnessed a surge in works related to Sanskrit. During the colonial period, there was an amalgamation of scholars trained in the traditional and modern European ways. In the post-independence era, Sanskrit was taught in colleges, universities, and institutes. Composition of treatises, publications of text, and critical editions were carried out as a part of scholarly endeavors. Eminent scholars such as Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Mahamahopadhyay, P.V. Kani, V.S. Suktankar, R.G. Bhandarkar, V.V. Mirashi, C.V. Vaidya, R.N. Dandekar, H.D. Velankar, S.M. Katre, G.B. Parsule, S.A. Dange, G.K. Bhatt, K.N. Vatve, S.B. Varnekar, and many others have made substantial contributions with their multifaceted studies in Sanskrit. However, the funding offered by the government became restricted. Sanskrit has survived in certain pockets of Maharashtra. What was the golden age of Sanskrit in Maharashtra? What were the reasons for the lack of such support in post-independence period? How has the Sanskrit fraternity responded to the challenges? What is the future of Sanskrit in Maharashtra? These questions will be probed in the Symposium on Sanskrit Studies of Maharashtra to decide the future roadmap. So I welcome you all, particularly the speakers of this symposium, Dr. Manjusha Gokhale, Dr. Parinita Deshpande, Dr. Vaishali Dapke, Dr. Shrikant Bahulkar, Dr. Prasad Joshi, Dr. Leena Hunnargikar, and also the chairpersons of this symposium, Dr. Kala Acharya and Dr. Girish Jani. I also welcome all our esteemed dignitaries present here, Professor Dr. Vijay Pandya sir, Dr. Mahulikar, Dr. Siddharth Vakarnkar, and many others. So once again, I welcome you all. Dhanyavadaha.
Thank you, madam. Now we begin with the first session of our symposium. In this session, 3 papers will be read by Dr. Manjusha Gokhale, Dr. Parinita Deshpande, and Dr. Vaishali Dapke. The session will be chaired by Dr. Kala Acharya. I request all of them to please take their seats on the stage. So at the outset, I welcome the chairperson and the readers, and we are really fortunate to have such eminent scholars with us. Let me begin by introducing our chairperson, Dr. Kala Acharya. Actually, her CV is so impressive and so vast. I am just going to touch upon a few highlights. Currently, she is working as Emeritus Professor in the K.J. Somaiya Institute of Dharma Studies. In the past years, she has worked in a number of important positions. To name a few, Director of Sanskriti Samvardhana Sanshodhana Pratishthan, Dean, Dharma Faculty, K.J. Somaiya University, Director, K.J. Somaiya Bharatiya Sanskriti Peetham, and so on. She has been the recipient of many prestigious awards and honors. I will mention a few of those. President's Award for the contribution to the field of Sanskrit in 2019. The title Mahamahopadhyaya from Kavi Kulaguru Kalidas Sanskrit University, Gold Medal, and the title Spiritual Light from the President of Kazakhstan. So we are really fortunate. She has also guided 17 students for their PhD. So now I request Dr. Gauri Mahulikar to felicitate Dr. Kala Acharya. Thank you, Mahulikar Madam, for doing the honors. Now we will proceed with the paper readings. A humble request to paper readers to keep to the limit of 15 minutes. The first paper will be read by Dr. Manjusha Gokhale. I will introduce her in brief. Presently, she is working as adjunct professor and dean, Faculty of Arts and Fine Arts, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit, Pune, since 2020. She has served a long, successful tenure as a popular teacher as head Sanskrit department in Ruya College from 1994 to 2017. She has worked as visiting faculty at Department of Sanskrit, University of Mumbai for a long period. She has guided 4 students for PhD and authored 4 books and co-authored the book Abhijata Sanskrit Sahityacha Itihas. I request Dr. Gokhale to start presentation.
Namo Namaha. Honorable Chairperson and respected audience, the title of my paper is Mahamahopadhyay Dr. V.V. Mirashi, Confluence of Pratibha, Vyutpatti and Abhyasa. Mirashi Kuladipaya Vidushe Vishnu Sunave Vasudevaya Vandyaya Nibandhoyam Samarpitaha. Among the scholars wholeheartedly devoted to the pursuit of Sanskrit and Indological studies, Mahamahopadhyay Mirashi's name stands very high. He has been well known for his monumental work in the field of literary, epigraphical, numismatic and historical studies. Dr. Mirashi was born in Kivale, Ratnagiri district on 13th March 1893. He had his school education with flying colors in Kolhapur. Then he acquired his graduation and post-graduation from Deccan College, Pune, bagging all prestigious prizes and scholarships. The period in which the upbringing and education of young Vasudeva was taking place was known as Tilak era. The atmosphere was enchanted with the wave of Western method of education on the one hand and with the urge of researching our own heritage on the other. The former must have imparted to young Vasudeva an aptitude for analytical thought process, critical attitude and penetrating insight, and the latter must have inspired him to bring the buried resources of Indian history into light. Indeed, Kautilya has rightly stated, Kriya hi dravyam vinayati na adravyam. Dr. Mirashi chose teaching as his profession. He was associated to Morris College, King Edward College and Nagpur University Department of Sanskrit, Pali and Prakrit, as well as Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture. This long career of teaching enabled him to create generations of able researchers. His close and long association with Vidarbha graced the field with Oriental studies in many ways. Though he was an institution by himself. He created and established a center of research named Vidarbha Sanshothan Mandal, which has been internationally reputed center for Indological research by bringing into light ample and valuable research works. He read, edited and published number of inscriptions, copper plates and coins related to Vidarbha province and brought into light ancient history of Vidarbha. Research has been the life breath of Dr. Mirashi. Vast circumference of his research encompasses various fields such as Sanskrit literature, Prakrit literature, art, architecture, epigraphy, numismatics, etc. Thus, literally each and every aspect of ancient Indian history and culture blazed in the light of his creative intelligence and scholarship. His research possesses two major purposes. One, to bring into light new information, and two, to solve problems in the field of Indology. His research is endowed with the originality of thought as well as lucid, well-reasoned presentation of it. Historical findings are never certain and they may be challenged time and again due to unearthing the new data. Dr. Mirashi was aware of this. In fact, he always tried to get new data through inscriptions and coins. Moreover, he used to welcome new findings by other scholars, examine them thoroughly, and incorporate them in his constructive research. On the other hand, he was frank and fearless in refuting the opinions of reputed scholars which, according to him, were baseless or misguiding. Scientific and unbiased approach to any problem was the special feature of his work. Namulam likhyate kinchit nanapekshitamuchyate was an unwritten rule he followed. Dr. Mirashi possessed aptitude for constructive research. He has not only published new facts as and when discovered, but arranged them systematically and developed continuous history based on them. His treatises on Kalachuri, Vakataka, Shilahara and Satavahana are evident of the fact. He has proclaimed in his treatise on Satavahana and Western Kshatrapas as follows, I quote, "An attempt has been made to give the reader as complete and clear an idea of the Satavahana age as possible." Dr. Mirashi's disciplined, precise and systematic work rewarded him as he was the first Indian who was assigned to write a volume of the Corpus Inscription Indicarum on the inscriptions of Kalachuri Chedi era. Dr. Mirashi has written 4 treatises on the history of Kalachuri, Vakataka, Satavahana and Shilahara dynasties. All these 4 dynasties occupy important place in the history of ancient India. The task of constructing history of these 4 dynasties demanded not only intelligence but also perseverance and sustained efforts. These treatises bring into light not only the history of the dynasties but also the history of the people living under their sovereignty. They consider various aspects such as polity, religion, society, economy, literature, art, architecture, etc. in that particular regime. These treatises are extremely useful and important for understanding and enjoying Sanskrit literature flourished in the era of those dynasties. In his treatise Meghadutatil Ramagiri अर्थात रामटेक, he gives all available data, inscriptional and literary, for the curious researchers and proves that the Kavikula Guru has created his celebrated composition at Ramtek in Maharashtra. Dr. Mirashi was always ready to take physical pains also. Prior to presenting his opinion regarding the native place of Bhavabhuti, he wandered on foot the hilly area of Padmapura near Amgaon in Bhandara district in order to find out the remains of ancient city. Kalidas and Bhavabhuti are the brilliant stars in the galaxy of Sanskrit literature. Dr. Mirashi loved both, no doubt, because they were master poets, besides that, because they belonged to Vidarbha region. There were problems regarding their date, life and works. Several scholars had dealt with these problems, but there was lot of confusion created by diverse opinions. Dr. Mirashi felt the need of a comprehensive work dealing with those problems and providing definite logical solutions. Hence, he composed the treatises on Kalidasa and Bhavabhuti, which have fulfilled the need. They consist of the determination regarding the dates, identification of birthplaces, the situation in the respective period, life sketches, chronological order of their works, special feature of their works, their impact on later writers, etc. Along with this, a detailed account of the plots of their compositions with numerous citations from them, together with their English and Marathi renderings, are also added to make the lay reader able to appreciate poet's genius and talent. His works on Kalidasa and Bhavabhuti are the results of his penance for 4 decades. Dr. Mirashi wanted common Indian people to read and know the history of their motherland, and language should not be a hurdle. Therefore, he never wanted his writing be restrained in English. Hence, he wrote almost all his books in English and Marathi. Some of them are translated even in Hindi, Oriya and Gujarati too. He presented serious subjects in simple and attractive manner. He always kept in mind that a common reader should first get interest in the subject, then only he would be prepared to acquire historical or technical information. With this thought, he has given information regarding temples, holy places, sculptures at Ramtek in the opening chapter of his treatise Meghadutatil Ramgiri अर्थात Ramtek. He always tried to inculcate curiosity and love for Sanskrit literature in common readers. Hence, in his historical treatises on Kalidasa and Bhavabhuti, he elaborates their literature also in lucid and pleasant style. It proves that Dr. Mirashi was never a dry historian or Indologist. He loved literature, no doubt, but while reading and enjoying literature, the hardcore researcher is always attentive. For him, literature reflects history, and history helps understanding literature. He combined literary studies and Indological studies. One of his works is titled as Literary and Indological Studies. Moreover, he has written ample research articles on various literary works from historical point of view. For example, date of Harivansha, author and date of Kundamala, location of Ravana's Lanka, date of Mahabharata war, date of Shudraka, authorship of Charudatta, Raghava Pandaviyam, polity in Viddhashala Bhanjika, Trivikrama Bhatta, a poet of Vidarbha, Udayana Sundari Katha, date of Gatha Saptashati, birthplace of Gunadhya, Hari Vijay, a poetry by Vakataka King Sarvasena, etc. All his work is the feast enjoyable by intelligence as well as by heart. Dr. Mirashi was the scholar of international repute and achiever of numerous prestigious awards, including the title Mahamahopadhyaya. In spite of that, humbleness and gratefulness were the major characteristics of Dr. Mirashi. Similar to his favorite poet Kalidasa, he was humble to his readers. It is evident by his quoting the Subhashita Marmikah ko marandanam antarena madhuvratam in the preface of Sanshotdhana Muktavali volume 10. He was grateful to his motherland Konkan and the land of Vidarbha where his career developed. By writing history of Shilahara and Vakataka dynasties, he felt that he was trying to repay the debt he owed to Konkan and Vidarbha respectively. Dr. Mirashi possessed the confluence of Pratibha, Vyutpatti and Abhyasa, which can be obviously noticed in his monumental work. He actually wished to opt the mathematics for his graduation, but as per the rules governing Varjivan Das Madhav Das Sanskrit scholarship, which he acquired in intermediate exam, he could not opt for mathematics thanks to that scholarship, because of which he had to opt for Sanskrit, and the field of Sanskrit and Indology was blessed to have such a stalwart scholar and researcher. Thank you. I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I am aware that within the time limit of 15 minutes, I could not read all the matter and the work of Dr. Mirashi. So forgive me for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for this informative and methodical paper, which highlighted the very beautiful mutual relation between history and literature. Thank you, Madam. Second paper in the symposium will be read by Dr. Parinita Deshpande. I'll give her introduction. She has worked as Honorary Director, Mahamahopadhyay Kane PG Research Institute, Asiatic Society of Mumbai, for a long period from 2013 to 23. She is visiting faculty at various institutions, including our own department. She has several research projects to her credit, which have been published in renowned journals. The ongoing project is Religion and Philosophy as gleaned through the Kavyas of Ashwaghosha, a very interesting subject. The areas of her academic coverage include Alankara Shastra, Bharata's Natya Shastra, Vedic studies, and Theravada Buddhism. She will be talking on the subject Contribution of Maharashtra to the fields of Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra. I request her to begin her presentation. Deshpande, Madam.
धन्यवाद मॅडम. नमो नमः. At the outset, I thank the department for giving me this privilege of being here today. The name Maharashtra opens before our mind a vista of illustrious scholars who have made great contributions to the field of Sanskrit studies. Dharma Shastra, dealing with Indian law and rules of conduct, and Artha Shastra, the science of politics and administration, are the two most important components of it, which phenomenal contribution is made by the stalwarts of Maharashtra. The glorious history of the studies in Dharma Shastra in Maharashtra goes back to the time of Vijnaneshwara, 12th century. One of the earliest Maharashtrians who wrote the commentary Mitakshara on Yajnavalkya Smriti which is universally recognized as an epoch-making work. He occupies preeminent position as an authority on law and usage in Maharashtra and can very well be said to have represented the Maharashtra mind. His revolutionary interpretation of the word pinda as particle of body as against the usual one as funeral cake is said to have liberated Hindu law from religious fetters. Apararka, the composer of Apararka Nibandha, followed by him, the polymath Hemadri, the composer of Chaturvarga Chintamani. Then comes Sabaji Prataparaj, the protege of Nizam Shah of Ahmednagar, who composed voluminous work on both Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra, some important topics, named Pratapa, Parashurama Pratapa, and he belongs to 16th century. Then comes Nanda Pandita Dharmadhikari, the composer of Dattaka Vidhana. These are the few illustrious names in this series. Paitan was the home of generations of Sanskrit scholars who, in their respective times, formed a kind of judicial forum for settling the disputes. The contribution of the five generations of the Bhatta family of Paitan to the religious and civil law is noteworthy. Narayana Bhatta, 17th century, his works Prayoga Ratna, Vivada Ratna, Kashi Mruta Nirnaya are well known. He also wrote extensively on pilgrimages in his work Tristhali Setu. Today, we talk a lot about spiritual tourism, etc. But this was done in the 17th century by Narayana Bhatta. Nilakantha. He was an eminent Maharashtrian jurist and the composer of famous Vyavahara Mayukha, which, according to the Bombay High Court, is a work of paramount authority as far as traditional Hindu law is concerned. Nilakantha indeed stands unsurpassed by any medieval Sanskrit writer on Dharma Shastra in mastery over the Smruti lore, lucidity of his exposition, clarity of vision, and sobriety of judgment. Then we come to the 17th century Gaga Bhatta, a collateral of Nilakantha, had a rare distinction of officiating at the coronation ceremony of Shivaji. His real name is Vishwarupa. There was a dispute regarding eligibility of Shivaji for royal throne, and it was eventually settled by Gaga Bhatta. He headed several judicial commissions appointed by Shivaji Maharaj, and his work Shivarajya Abhisheka Prayoga is a remarkable manual in this subject. Among the works on law and polity during Shivaji's regime, mention may be made Rajadharma Kaustubha by Anantadeva of Paitan and Rajya Vyavahara Kosha by Raghunatha Pandit. Keshav Pandit compiled for Sambhaji, following him, two works on Dharma Shastra, that is Dharma Kalpalata and Kayastha Prabhu Nirnaya. During Sambhaji's regime only, Ashaucha Nirnaya was written by Trembaka Hanumante, which is popularly also known as Trembaki. Nagoji Bhatta, we all know about him as a great grammarian, but besides that, he has made, among all other works, a great number of digests on daily conduct, pollution, expiation, and other important topics of Dharma Shastra, which will be useful for day-to-day life of Maharashtrians. There is one curious name as Balkrishna Paigunde, the son of Vaidyanath Paigunde, who has written commentary on Parashara Smriti, I think. He wrote, Vaidyanath's son Balkrishna, he wrote the commentary, that is sub-commentary actually, because it is commentary on Mitakshara. And he wrote this commentary in the name of his mother, Lakshmi Devi. And this work advocates latitudinarian attitude, views, and is very much known for pro-woman attitude. For example, this work insists that the word bhrataraha includes also sisters, thereby implying preference to full sisters over the half-brothers in the matter of succession. In more recent times, Sridhara Shastri Pathak of Dhulia, that is Dhule, delivered lectures on Dharma Shastra, explaining how traditional Hindu law is capable of standing the stress and strain of modern living. These lectures are published by Nagpur University. And then comes another name from Nagpur, that is Krishna Shastri Ghule, who wrote Sapindya Bhaskara. The Dharma Kosha, which is being published by the Pradnya Pathashala Vai, 1937 onwards, these volumes are being published. This is an encyclopedia of Dharma Shastra, and the term Dharma Shastra having been understood in its widest connotations. Up till now, 25 volumes are published, and an equal amount of work is still pending due to, it is hampered due to paucity of funds. Mention must be made of the critical editions of Dharma Shastra texts by scholars like Rao Sahib Vishwanath Narayan Mandlik, 1833 to 1899, an eminent lawyer and the legal expert on Hindu law, who served on Supreme Legislative Council of India, where his expertise was held in high esteem by both the bench and the bar. His several works include the critical editions of Manusmriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, and Vyavahara Mayukha. Then comes Dr. J.R. Gharpure, that is Jagannath Raghunath Gharpure, 1872 to 1962, one of the founder members of Indian Law Society's Law College, Pune. He wrote Samaya Mayukha, and his book Hindu Law is published by our own university, Bombay University, in 1910. The most outstanding research work in the field of Dharma Shastra is the monumental History of Dharma Shastra, published in 3 to 4 decades by Bhandarkar Research Institute, Pune, by, of course, Bharata Ratna Mahamopadhyay Panduranga Vaman Kane, 1880 to 1972. Kane's magnum opus, The History of Dharma Shastra, runs into 6,500 printed pages, divided into 5 volumes, 2 of which have been published in 2 parts each. It is also the history of Hindu culture and civilization, and constitutes an authoritative and encyclopedic treatment on religion and civil law of ancient and medieval India. It is difficult to conceive of an aspect of Dharma Shastra which Kane did not deal with and cover thoroughly and objectively. The number of original texts, the commentaries and digests in Sanskrit, and books in modern languages which the author has consulted for this history is really breathtaking. No Indologist before Kane ever attempted such a task. Therefore, this work is unique in the every sense of the word. Mahamopadhyay Kane's career was a saga of dedication and pursuit of learning. He impresses readers as a philologist, etymologist, astrologist, and also as epigraphist. These branches also bore fruit of his erudition, that much vast was the sweep of his research. He criticized Winternitz for his view that niyoga is due to poverty and paucity of women in India. He also criticized Max Muller for his view that the art of writing was unknown in ancient India. And these criticisms were free from any bias and are based on his close study of the Western scholars over 50 years and more. No wonder that all the prestigious honors that a scholar can aspire were conferred upon him. The crowning glory of all this was the award of Bharata Ratna. The conferment of this award, which came to him unsought, is the country's highest tribute to Mahamohopadhyay Kane's scholarship. Recently, in the year 2000, the abridged version of this book, compiled by Dr. S.G. Moghe, another great name in the field of Dharma Shastra, has been published by the Kane Trust, Mumbai. And this essence of Dharma Shastra has proved to be reference-friendly and handy even for the students of law. While talking about the studies in the Dharma Shastra, I think we cannot remain silent about the controversy that took place in Maharashtra. It is said that fame invites controversy. And Manu became the symbol of oppression. His verses were cited out of context, and his work, Manusmriti, one of the earliest and important texts of Dharma Shastra, was burnt ceremonially in 1927. More heat, literally and metaphorically, has been generated than light. Without taking any position about this work's social value, I feel that the study of the text itself has been neglected over the past 2 centuries. Until now, even a close examination of the numerous extant manuscripts of this work, take it from me, more than 50 manuscripts of Manusmriti are available, written in 9 Indian scripts. But that is scattered, spread all over Indian subcontinent. But this study has not been undertaken. I hope that we should take the trouble to read the text with the right context and the attention it deserves before we praise, condemn, or even burn it. With this now, we come to the field of Arthashastra. As far as Arthashastra is concerned, there are a few Marathi names which deserve a mention here. The first name is Balwanta Ramchandra Hivargaonkar, whose book Kautilyache Arthashastra in Marathi was published as early as 1927 by Varada Books, Pune. With 586 pages, this voluminous book is regarded as a standard work on Arthashastra. Unfortunately, the author did not survive to see its publication. It was published posthumously with the assistance of J.S. Karandikar, that is Janardhan Sakharam Karandikar. The book has the introduction by Dr. Durga Bhagavat, a scholar of great repute in Indological and allied studies, who has praised this book, stating its importance and the need at the time when the scanty material was available on the subject. Around the same time, that is in 1926, another Marathi book named Arthashastra Pradeep by Govinda Gopal Tipnis appeared. This small edition is a summary of R. Shamasastri's English translation of Arthashastra that was published in 1915. A reference may be made to the book by Dr. Devadatta Ramakrishna Bhandarkar, Some Aspects of Ancient Hindu Polity, published in 1929. Professor R.P. Kangle, Ramakanta Pandharinath Kangle, 1899 to 1989, became well known to Indian and Western scholars by his magnificent critical edition of Kautilya Arthashastra, its translation in English and Marathi, with exclusive information and comprehensive study of the book in 3 volumes. This book was first published in 1955 by our same university, University of Bombay at that time. The work is having newer explanations, it goes deeper, most thorough, and the ultimate source for those who want to understand the roots of Indian statecraft. Friends, this paper is a humble attempt to highlight the contribution of Maharashtra to the study of Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra. I am aware that it is not exhaustive due to time constraint, and I don't claim that each and every significant contribution is covered here. But still, at the end, I would say that there is a lot of scope in this field, especially in the field of Dharma Shastra. Some women jurists have done work. Their texts they have not seen the light of the day. There is a scope, those who are interested, and it is, this study is really very heartening. With this, I take your leave. Thank for listening to me patiently.
Thank you, madam, for such a scholarly paper. And it was indeed challenging to encompass innumerable information details of importance, which you have done in a very lucid and systematic manner. Now we come to the third and last paper in this session, which will be read by Dr. Vaishali Dapke. She is presently Head, Department of Sanskrit, Ramnarayan Ruya Autonomous College. She has 27 plus years of rich experience in undergraduate teaching and 12 years in postgraduate teaching. She is a member of Board of Studies of Sanskrit University of Mumbai and Ramnarayan Ruya Autonomous College. She is the recipient of a number of awards. To name just one of them, Vyasa Ratna Puraskar by the publication Vyasa Creations at Thane in 2023. She is actively engaged in a number of extension activities related to the propagation and popularization of Sanskrit in the form of lecture series on a variety of topics. She is the co-author of 3 books. She has presented papers at seminars and conferences. Her topic today is Sanskrita Sahitya Srishtila, Dr. Goke Bhattanche Yogadan. I request her to start her paper.
नमस्तभाये. आजच्या चर्चासत्राचे अध्यक्ष, व्यासपीठावरील आणि सभागृहात बसलेले माझे सर्व गुरुजन, चर्चासत्रामध्ये उपस्थित असलेले मान्यवर, या सगळ्यांना मी अभिवादन करते. संस्कृत विभागातर्फे गोके भटांच्या योगदानाविषयीचे माझे विचार मांडण्याची मला संधी मिळाली म्हणून मी कृतज्ञता प्रकट करते. संस्कृत नाटकांचं अंतरंग ज्यांनी आमच्या अंतरंगात उतरवलं त्या डॉक्टर भटांच्या स्मृतीला मी विनम्र अभिवादन करते. पेपर सुरू करायच्या आधी शोधनिबंधाच्या दृष्टीने गोके भटांच्या साहित्याचं वर्गीकरण मी केलेलं आहे. त्यांची नाटकांचं रसग्रहण करणारी पुस्तकं, नाटकांचे अनुवाद, साहित्यशास्त्रावरील पुस्तकं आणि वेदवाङ्मयावर आधारित त्यांचं लेखन, या सर्व ग्रंथांपैकी सुमारे 25 ते 30 नावं आहेत. तर या ग्रंथांपैकी प्राध्यापक भटांनी सर्वाधिक पुस्तकं संस्कृत नाटकं या विषयावर मराठी आणि इंग्रजी भाषेत लिहिलेली दिसतात. त्यांपैकी मराठी पुस्तकांची संख्या निश्चितच अधिक आहे. यादी वाचत नाही. या रसग्रहणात्मक पुस्तकांच्या व्यतिरिक्त स्वप्न वासवदत्त, वेणी संहार, मालविकाग्निमित्र, शाकुंतल, मुद्रा राक्षस या नाटकांचा मराठी, इंग्रजी आणि काहींचं दोन्ही भाषातील अनुवादही त्यांचे प्रसिद्ध आहेत. या सर्व पुस्तकांपैकी मधुधारा हे पुस्तक त्यांनी 1953 साली लिहिलं, ज्यामध्ये संस्कृत आणि मराठी साहित्यावरील नियतकालिकात प्रसिद्ध झालेल्या लेखांचं संकलन आहे. यामध्ये अध्यापनातील शृंगारस्थळे हा पहिलाच असं शीर्षक असलेला पहिलाच लेख आहे. या लेखामध्ये सरस्वती चंद्र नावाच्या काल्पनिक व्यक्तिरेखेच्या मुखातून प्राध्यापक भटांनी संस्कृत नाटकाच्या समीक्षेविषयी आपला दृष्टिकोन मांडलेला दिसतो. ते म्हणतात की संस्कृत भाषेचा म्हणून ज्यावेळी अभ्यास करायचा असेल त्यावेळी व्याकरणाला सारं महत्त्व आहे हे सांगायला नको. त्यांच्या काळातल्या गोष्टी ते बोलतायत. परंतु आमच्या अध्यापनात याच गोष्टीला परंपरेने इतकं महत्त्व दिलं आहे की याकरता संस्कृत वाङ्मयाचा काही अभ्यास आहे याची पुसटशी जाणीवही फार थोड्यांना दिसते. कवीच्या जन्मकाळासंबंधी अंतहीन वादाचं चर्वण, काव्यनाट्य स्वरूपाचं संस्कृत साहित्यानुसार तंत्रबद्ध निर्जीव विवेचन, तीच ती कवीने योजलेल्या वृत्तांची ठोकळेबाज समजावणी, प्रत्यक्ष रसविवेचन, नाट्याचा आविष्कार आणि स्वभाव आलेखन इत्यादी गोष्टी जेव्हा येतात तेव्हा या विद्वानांची लेखणी लगेच विसावते. संस्कृत वाङ्मय हे वाङ्मय आहे आणि त्याचा या ललित आणि सौंदर्यान्वेषी दृष्टीनं अभ्यास होऊ शकतो याची जाणीव आमच्या विद्वानांना फारशी आहे असं म्हणवत नाही. काव्यानंदाची द्वारं विद्यार्थ्यांना खुली करून दिली पाहिजेत. सर्व वाङ्मय एका दृष्टीने सामाजिक दर्शन आहे. वाङ्मयाला त्याच्या सामाजिक संकेतापासून विभक्त केलं तर अर्थाचा अनर्थ होईल. ऐतिहासिक दृष्टीचा अवलंब करणे हे देखील फार महत्त्वाची गोष्ट आहे. प्रारंभीच्याच लेखात व्यक्त केलेली ही खंत आणि नाटकाच्या आणि एकूण साहित्य समीक्षेचे निकष इथे सांगितलेले हेच पुढे भटांच्या समीक्षेचं व्यवच्छेदक लक्षण ठरलं असं दिसतं. द ड्रॅमॅटिक थीम्स ऑफ भास अँड देअर ट्रीटमेंट हा प्रबंध विद्यावाचस्पती पदवीकरता लिहिण्यापूर्वी आणि प्राध्यापक भटांच्या लेखन कारकिर्दीला प्रारंभ होण्यापूर्वी विल्सन, कीथ, मीरवर्थ, मॅकडोनेल, वुलनर, मॅक्सम्युलर इत्यादी पाश्चात्य तसेच गणपती शास्त्री, जागीरदार, देवधर, पुसाळकर, स्वरूप इत्यादी एतद्देशीय विद्वानांनी आपल्या ग्रंथात नाटकांची समीक्षा केली होती. परंतु सौंदर्यशास्त्र आणि भटांच्या भाषेत सांगायचं तर सौंदर्यान्वेषी दृष्टीने विचार झाला नव्हता. समीक्षेतील याच हरवलेल्या घटकावर प्राध्यापक भटांनी भर देऊन सौंदर्यशास्त्र, साहित्यशास्त्र आणि मानसशास्त्रीय अंगाने नाटकांची वाङ्मयीन समीक्षा केलेली दिसते. तत्कालीन विद्वानांनी न चोखळलेल्या वाटेवर क्रमणा करण्याचा निर्णय त्यांनी घेतला हे त्यांच्या विविध लेखांमध्ये आणि त्यांच्या पुस्तकांच्या प्रस्तावनेत स्पष्ट होतं. साहित्यशास्त्रीय आणि मानसशास्त्रीय अंगाने नाट्यसमीक्षा करताना भटांची अशीच विशिष्ट पद्धत दिसून येते. नाटकाचं शीर्षक, नाटकाची कथावस्तू इत्यादी नाटकाच्या वस्तुघटनात्मक म्हणजे बाह्य अंगापासून नाटकीय पात्रांची मानसिक आंदोलन टिपत थेट नाटकाच्या अंतरंगापर्यंत वाचकाला क्रमाक्रमानं घेऊन जाणारी प्राध्यापक भटांची समीक्षा हा वाङ्मयीन समीक्षेचा एक आदर्श वस्तुपाठच ठरला, जो परवर्ती अभ्यासकांना सतत मार्गदर्शन करत आहे. स्थूलापासून सूक्ष्मापर्यंत हा प्रवास वाचकाला नाटकाच्या अंतःप्रेरणेपर्यंत घेऊन जातो. नाटकाची आणि नाटककाराची अंतःप्रेरणा जाणणं हाच प्राध्यापक भटांच्या समीक्षेचा गाभा आहे असं दिसतं. प्राध्यापक भटांनी विद्यावाचस्पती पदवीसाठी लिहिलेल्या भास नाटकावरील त्यांच्या प्रबंधातील विषयच नंतर स्वतंत्र पुस्तकांचे विषय झाले असं दिसतं. जसे विदूषक इंग्रजी आणि मराठी, ट्रॅजेडी अँड संस्कृत ड्रामा, भास अँड भरत, भास स्टडीज, भास 3 एकांकिका, उरुभंग इत्यादी. मात्र या पुस्तकातील विषय भासनाटकांपुरता मर्यादित न ठेवता इतर नाटककारांच्या नाटकांचा समावेश करून त्यांनी पुस्तकांच्या कक्षा वाढवलेल्या दिसतात. शोकात्मिकेचा प्रश्न, रंगमंचीय सादरीकरण इत्यादी विषयांची प्रेरणाही त्यांना प्रबंधातील अभ्यासातूनच मिळालेली दिसते. नंतरच्या पुस्तकातील काही फेरफार वगळता बराच भाग प्रबंधातून त्यांनी जशाच्या तसा घेतला आहे किंवा अनुवादित केला आहे. मात्र इंग्रजी पारिभाषिक संज्ञांनी युक्त अशी ही समीक्षा मराठी भाषेत अनुवादित करताना चपखल मराठी परिभाषा त्यांनी वापरली आहे किंवा आवश्यक तेथे नवीन परिभाषा निर्माण केली आहे. जसे ड्रॅमॅटिक आयरनी यासाठी नाट्यछलित आणि नाट्यपूर्ण वक्रोक्ती हे 2 शब्द त्यांनी योजलेले दिसतात. ते म्हणतात, नाट्यपूर्ण उपरोध जेव्हा संवादात किंवा वाक्यात असतो तेव्हा ड्रॅमॅटिक आयरनी म्हणजे नाट्यपूर्ण वक्रोक्ती आणि संपूर्ण प्रसंगात अभिप्रेत असतो तेव्हा नाट्यछलित असे पर्याय मी सुचवले आहेत. ट्रॅजिक आयरनी म्हणजे कारुण्य पर्यवसायी वक्रोक्ती तर कॉमिक आयरनीला हास्य पर्यवसायी वक्रोक्ती अशी परिभाषा भटांनी योजलेली दिसते. संस्कृत नाट्यविषयक त्यांच्या समग्र संशोधनाचा आणि मौलिक विचाराचा परिपाक म्हणजे संस्कृत नाटके आणि नाटककार हे पुस्तक जे 1980 मध्ये प्रकाशित झालं. तत्पूर्वी या सर्व ठिकाणी म्हणजे जी पुस्तकं नाटकांची समीक्षा करणारी लिहिलेत त्या सर्व पुस्तकांमध्ये त्यांची लेखनाची शैली निश्चितच मनोवेधक आणि लालित्याकडे अधिक झुकणारी आहे. संपूर्ण नाटक न वाचताही नाटक निव्वळ वाचल्याचाच नाही तर त्याचा आस्वाद घेतल्याचा अनुभव ही शैली भरभरून देते. नाटकातले अंतःपदर हळूवार उलगडवून दाखवते. मात्र ही सर्व पुस्तके वाचल्यावर त्यामध्ये पुनरुक्ती आणि एकांगी दृष्टिकोनातून केलेल्या समीक्षेचा अनुभव आल्याशिवाय राहत नाही. प्राध्यापक भटांनी काही संस्कृत नाटकांचे अनुवादही केले आहेत. अनुवाद करण्यामागची त्यांची भूमिकाही अतिशय स्पष्टपणे त्यांनी प्रस्तावनेत नोंदवली आहे. ते म्हणतात, संस्कृतचे मराठी करताना मराठी भाषिक प्रकृती बिघडू नये आणि केवळ मराठी वाचताना आपण एक नाटक सलग वाचतो आहोत असा प्रत्यय वाचकाला मिळावा अशी शक्यतो काळजी मी घेतली आहे. शब्दशः भाषांतर या नावाखाली जी भाषिक विकृती अनेक वेळा दिसून येते ती मला समर्थनीय वाटत नाही. संस्कृत लेखनशैली ही गद्यपद्य मिश्र असूनही पद्यांची भाषांतर पद्यातच करण्याचा मोह टाळल्याचं ते स्वप्नवासव दत्ताच्या प्रस्तावनेत म्हणतात. मात्र मुद्रा राक्षस नाटकामध्ये त्यांनी मुक्तछंदाचा उपयोग करून गेय पद्यांचा अनुवाद केलेला दिसतो. स्वप्नवासव दत्त नाटकाचा अनुवाद त्यांनी प्रथम इंग्रजी, गुजराती आणि नंतर मराठीत केला. हे अनुवाद प्रामुख्याने विद्यार्थ्यांना डोळ्यासमोर ठेवूनच केलेले दिसतात. विशेष करून स्वप्नवासव दत्ताच्या अनुवादापूर्वी भासनाटकांविषयी आणि स्वप्न वासव दत्त नाटकातील विविधांगी समीक्षा करणारी प्रदीर्घ प्रस्तावना त्यांनी लिहिली आहे. त्यात विविध पाश्चात्य पौर्वात्य अभ्यासकांची मतं लक्षात घेऊन साधक चर्चा केली आहे. आवश्यक तेथे तळटीपा दिल्या आहेत. प्रत्यक्ष अनुवादात नाटकाधारित महत्त्वाच्या विवेचक टीपा तसेच तळटीपांमध्ये पाठभेद, काही आवश्यक स्पष्टीकरणे, नाट्यविषयक तांत्रिक गोष्टी यांचा समावेश आहे. नाटकाच्या अनुवादाच्या पुस्तकात देखील परिशिष्टेही छात्रगणांना समोर ठेवूनच लिहिलेली दिसतात, ज्यामध्ये नांदी इत्यादी पारिभाषिक संज्ञांचं स्पष्टीकरण, नाटककाराची प्रशस्ती करणाऱ्या श्लोकांचं संकलन, नाटकातील श्लोकांचे छंद, वृत्त आणि अलंकार अशी विद्यार्थ्यांकरता उपयुक्त परिशिष्टे दिलेली दिसतात. मुद्रा राक्षस नाटकाच्या सुरुवातीला नाटकातील पात्र तसेच विविध अंकातील स्थळ, घटनाक्रम तसेच नाटकातील मास, तिथी इत्यादी संदर्भांवरनं कालगणना करून नाटकातील कोणती घटना कोणत्या दिवशी घडली असेल हे निश्चित करून एकूण कथेचा कालावधी 10 महिन्यांचा हे त्यांनी सोप्या रीतीने मांडून दाखवलेलं आहे. मात्र तिथे दीर्घ प्रस्तावना नाही, नाटकाची निव्वळ तोंडओळख करून दिलेली दिसते. मुद्रा राक्षसात श्लेषयुक्त वाक्यरचना पुष्कळ आहेत. अशा रचनांचा अनुवाद करताना ते म्हणतात, ज्यावेळी श्लेषाने युक्त शब्दरचना केलेली असते आणि हे अर्थ लेखकाला अभिप्रेत असतात त्यावेळी ते 2 किंवा अधिक अर्थ सादृश्याने एकमेकाशेजारी उभे असतात. सर्वच अर्थ स्पष्ट व्हावे अशी इच्छा असल्यास या रचनेचा अनुवाद करताना उपमेय उपमान भावाने केला पाहिजे. मी केलेले अनुवाद हे या दृष्टीने पाहावेत. परंतु सर्व श्लोकांचे ते असे अनुवाद करत नाहीत. काही ठिकाणी सरळ अनुवाद देतात आणि विवेचक टीपेमध्ये श्लेषाने व्यक्त होणारा दुसरा अर्थ ते स्पष्ट करतात. उदाहरणं इथे आहेत परंतु वेळेअभावी वाचता येणार नाही. काही वेळा अनुवाद करताना नाटकातील संवादांमध्ये नेमका कोणत्या व्यक्तीचा निर्देश होतो हे लक्षात येत नाही. अशा वेळे तळटीपेत त्या व्यक्ती कोण असाव्यात असं ते नमूद करतात. हे अगदी विद्यार्थ्यांना समजण्यासाठी केलेलं असावं असं खूप वेळा वाटतं. जसं स्वप्नवासव दत्तात ब्रह्मचारी म्हणतो, मी उभयतांची रजा घेतो. हे उभयता कोण असावेत हे सांगण्यासाठी ते तळटीपेत स्पष्टीकरण देतात. जमलेल्या लोकात पुरुष आणि वयाने मोठे असे कांचुकी आणि यौगंधरायण हे दोघेच आहेत, म्हणून हे वाक्य त्यांना उद्देशून लिहिलेलं असलं पाहिजे असं स्पष्टीकरण त्यांनी दिलेलं आहे. एकूणच मराठी भाषेच्या प्रकृतीला अनुसरून संस्कृत एका वाक्याचा 2 वाक्यात सोपा करून अनुवाद करणं, संदेह असलेल्या ठिकाणी कारणासहित स्पष्टीकरण देणं असे अनेक उपाय भाषांतर करताना त्यांनी योजलेले दिसतात. काही संबोधनांचा अनुवाद मात्र खटकतो, जसे आर्ये याचा अनुवाद माताजी असा केलेला आहे, किंवा जाते, बाळ, भर्तृदारिका, ताईसाहेब, भट्टिनी, राणी सरकार. मात्र त्यांनी घेतलेल्या भूमिकेनुसार केवळ अनुवाद वाचला तरी नाटकाचा रसास्वाद घेता येतो, इतका तो भाषेच्या मूळ प्रकृतीशी जुळणारा आणि स्वाभाविक सहज सोप्या भाषेत केलेला आहे. नाटक ही दृक्श्राव्य कला आहे याची जाणीव प्राध्यापक भटांच्या समीक्षेमध्ये नेहमी दिसते. त्यांच्या काही विद्यार्थ्यांशी बोलणं झालं तेव्हा त्या म्हणाल्या की प्रत्येक दृश्य रंगमंचावर कसं सादर होत असेल हे ते वर्गात समजावून सांगत असत. फार कमी वेळा अशी नाटकाची समीक्षा शिकवताना सुद्धा केली जाते. त्यांची दृक्श्राव्य कला आहे ही जाणीव त्यांच्या समीक्षेमध्ये नेहमी दिसते, व्यक्त होते. इतकंच नाही तर एखाद्या नाटकाचे सादरीकरण कसे होत असेल याविषयी वेळोवेळी त्यांनी मौलिक विचार मांडलेले दिसतात. नाटकाच्या मंचनाविषयीची समीक्षा त्यांनी विशेष करून भासनाटकांच्या संदर्भात केलेली आहे. 1983 मध्ये प्रकाशित झालेल्या थिएट्रिक ॲस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ संस्कृत ड्रामा या पुस्तकात तो विचार खूपच सविस्तर आहे, ज्यामध्ये भरतनाट्यशास्त्रातील रंगमंच या विषयाचा सर्वांगाने विचार केला आहे. सचित्र असलेल्या या पुस्तकात भरताने सांगितलेले रंगमंचाचे प्रकार, अलंकरण, पटी इत्यादी अनेक आणि चतुर्विध अभिनय ह्याचा सविस्तर विचार आहे. मुद्रा राक्षस नाटकाचा विजया मेहता यांनी केलेल्या मराठी भाषेतील प्रयोगाकरता भट सरांनी मार्गदर्शन केले होते, तेव्हा तयार केलेल्या रंगमंचाचे रेखाचित्रही या पुस्तकात पाहायला मिळते. त्यामुळे निव्वळ संशोधन, अभ्यास आणि पुस्तकी सिद्धांतच नाही तर प्रत्यक्ष प्रयोगातही त्यांचा सहभाग होता असं दिसतं. मात्र भास स्टडीज इत्यादी पुस्तकांमध्ये भासनाटकातील द्विकेंद्री दृश्य किंवा अभिमारकाच्या 3ऱ्या अंकातले दृश्य यांच्या मंचनाबाबत केलेली निरीक्षणे, अलीकडील लोककलातील सादरीकरणाशी केलेली त्यांची जोडणी प्राचीन भारतीय रंगमंचानुसार असण्यापेक्षा स्वकल्पनेतनं अधिक उतरलेली दिसते. नाट्यविषयक ग्रंथसंभारातील उल्लेखनीय अशी प्राध्यापक भटांची ग्रंथरत्नद्वयी म्हणजे भरतनाट्य मंजरी आणि त्याचा उत्तर भाग असलेले नाट्य मंजरी सौरभ. भरतनाट्य मंजरी म्हणजे भरतनाट्यशास्त्रातील निवडक वेचांचे संकलन आहे. नाट्यशास्त्रातील सर्व महत्त्वाच्या संकल्पना सिद्धांताचा समावेश होईल अशा रीतीने त्यांनी श्लोकांची आणि विषयांची निवड ग्रंथात केली आहे. नाट्यशास्त्रीय मूलभूत संकल्पना सिद्धांतांची सानुवाद सटीप ओळख ते वाचकांना करून देतात. या पुस्तकाची प्रदीर्घ प्रस्तावना नाट्यविषयक मूलभूत संकल्पना आणि महत्त्व विशद करणारी आणि प्राध्यापक भटांचे मौलिक विचार मांडणारी आहे. नाट्यमंजरी सौरभ या ग्रंथात नाट्यशास्त्र विषयक विविध ग्रंथातील महत्त्वाच्या विषयांचे सटीप संकलन अतिशय महत्त्वाचे आहे. या दोन्ही पुस्तकांच्या प्रस्तावना हे नाट्यशास्त्रावरील अत्यंत महत्त्वाचे संदर्भ ग्रंथ आहेत असं म्हणणं अर्थातच वावगं ठरणार नाही. ज्या काळात ग्रंथ संदर्भ पुस्तकं सहज प्राप्य नव्हती त्या काळात अशा रीतीने एकाच विषयावर अनेक ग्रंथातील महत्त्वाच्या श्लोकांचे संकलन हे किती मूल्यवान होते हे सांगण्याची आवश्यकता नाही. नाट्यशास्त्राचा आणि संस्कृत नाटकांचा प्रायोगिक दृष्टीने अभ्यास करणाऱ्या फार थोड्या अभ्यासकांपैकी भटांचं नाव हे अग्रक्रमाने घेणं आवश्यक आहे. साहित्य दर्पण, काव्यशास्त्राची प्रस्तावना आणि ऑन मीटर्स अँड फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच ही पुस्तके प्राध्यापक भटांनी विशेष करून विद्यार्थ्यांसाठीच लिहिली आहेत असं त्यांनी प्रस्तावनेत म्हटलं आहे. ऑन मीटर्स या पुस्तकाच्या प्रस्तावनेत ते म्हणतात की विद्यार्थ्यांना सहज समजेल असे वृत्तालंकार सुसूत्रपणे लिहिलेले, सहज हाताळता येईल असे पाठ्यपुस्तक उपलब्ध नाही. साहित्य दर्पण या पुस्तकाच्या प्राककथनातही विद्यार्थी वर्ग आणि संस्कृतप्रेमी जनांना उपयुक्त व्हावे म्हणून गोके भटांना हे पुस्तक लिहिण्याची विनंती केल्याचे कुलकर्णी यांनी नमूद केले आहे. या प्रस्तावनेतील कुलकर्णी यांचे एक वाक्य सांगावंसं वाटतं. ते म्हणतात, डॉक्टर भटांनी ही प्रस्तावना लिहिली आहे एवढं सांगितलं म्हणजे तिच्या स्वरूपाविषयी अधिक काही सांगण्याची वास्तविक पाहता गरज नाही. या उद्गारातच सरांचे विद्यार्थ्यांसाठी सहज सोप्या भाषेत लिहिण्याचे कौशल्य आणि लेखन सामर्थ्य अधोरेखित होते. संस्कृत नाटकातील शोकात्मिकांचा प्रश्न हा डॉक्टर भटांचा एक आवडता विषय. संस्कृत नाटकात करुण रस आहे, परंतु शोकांत नाही. शोकांत नाटकाच्या अभावाची कारणमीमांसा करताना त्यांनी शेक्सपियर, ग्रीक शोकांत नाटकं, शोकांतांविषयी अरिस्टॉटलचे विचार अशा अनेक अंगांनी शोकात्म नाटकांच्या प्रश्नाचे विश्लेषण करून भासाचे उरुभंग आणि कर्णभार ही एकांक रूपके अपवादरूप शोकांतिका आहेत हे मत व्यक्त केले आहे आणि त्याचे सखोल विश्लेषण केले आहे. संस्कृत नाटककारांच्या मांदियाळीत भास, कालिदास, भवभूती यांच्याविषयी डॉक्टर भटांच्या मनात विशेष प्रेम आणि स्थान आहे हे त्यांच्या लेखनावरून जागोजागी दिसते. त्यांचे कालिदास दर्शन हे पुस्तक त्यांनी दिलेल्या 3 व्याख्यानांना मिळालेलं ग्रंथरूप आहे, ज्यामध्ये कालिदासाची सौंदर्यसृष्टी, विचारदर्शन, कालिदास आणि इतर नाटककारांची तुलना याविषयी भटांचे विवेचन लक्षणीय आहे. त्यांचे अपॉइंटमेंट विथ कालिदास हे पुस्तक या संदर्भात विशेष दखल घेण्याजोगे आहे. दुर्दैवाने मला ते मिळू शकलं नाही आणि म्हणून मुळातनं वाचता आलं नाही. एवढं एकच वाक्य म्हणून त्याच्याविषयी मी लिहिलेलं आहे. संस्कृत नाटकांचा आणखीन एक विशेष म्हणजे विदूषक हे विनोद निर्मिती करणारे संस्कृत नाटकातील पात्र. विश्वनाथ मंडलिक सुवर्ण पदकासाठी भट सरांनी सादर केलेला हा प्रबंध 1959 मध्ये पुस्तक रूपाने प्रसिद्ध झाला. विदूषकासारख्या एखाद्या गौण पात्रावर इतकी सखोल आणि साध्यंत चर्चा करून तौलनिक अभ्यासाच्या आधारावर कितीतरी निष्कर्ष भटांनी नव्याने मांडले आहेत. त्या काळात सर्वस्वी नवीन असणारे कितीतरी विचार या पुस्तकात दिसतात. 5 वर्षांच्या अथक संशोधनाची ही सुफल परिणिती आजही वरवर गौण वाटणाऱ्या एखाद्या विषयाचं संशोधन कसं होऊ शकतं याला मार्गदर्शक ठरते. भटांच्या समग्र साहित्याचा धांडोळा घेतल्यावर लक्षात येते ती त्यांची संस्कृत साहित्याविषयीची आणि विशेष करून संस्कृत नाट्य विषयाची आस्था आणि अपार प्रेम. त्यांच्या साहित्य संपदेत जास्तीत जास्त पुस्तकं आणि लिखाण संस्कृत नाटकांविषयी त्यांनी केलेलं दिसतं. या विषयातील त्यांचं योगदान विविध कारणांकरता अमूल्य आहे. ज्या काळात संस्कृत नाटकांची समीक्षा प्रामुख्याने इंग्रजीतून केली जात होती, एवढेच नव्हे तर समीक्षा इंग्रजीत करणं हे विद्वत्तेचं लक्षण मानलं जात होतं. त्यांच्या मधुधारा पुस्तकात त्यांनी म्हटलंय की नव्याने आलेले आंग्ल विद्या विभूषित जे आहेत ते तर मीमांसा अतिशयच भयंकर पद्धतीने करतात, अशा आशयाचं वाक्य आहे. तर एवढंच नव्हे तर समीक्षा इंग्रजीत करणं हे विद्वत्तेचं लक्षण मानलं जात होतं. त्या काळात मराठी भाषेतून समीक्षा करणारे लेख, पुस्तकं विविध ठिकाणहून प्रकाशित करणं आणि ते लिहिणं हेच मुळात अत्यंत महत्त्वाचं योगदान आहे. डॉक्टर भटांनीच म्हटल्याप्रमाणे त्यांच्या काळात समीक्षेचे आयाम आणि निकष काहीसे ठरून गेलेले आणि वृक्षतेकडे नेणारे होते. ही समीक्षा प्रामुख्याने व्याकरणाच्या नाटकीय तंत्र आणि भाषिका अंगाने जाणारी होती. त्याला छेद देत स्वयंप्रज्ञेने मानसशास्त्र आणि सौंदर्यशास्त्राच्या निकषावर नाटकांची कलात्मक समीक्षा करण्याचा पायंडा आणि आदर्श वस्तुपाठ त्यांनी आपल्या लघुलेखांमधनं, पुस्तकांमधनं आणि लघु प्रबंधातनं घालून दिला. समीक्षेसाठी योजली जाणारी भाषा वृक्ष नाही तर वृक्ष नको तर लालित्यपूर्ण आणि मनोवेधक असू शकते हेही त्यांनी दाखवून दिलं. दृश्यकला म्हणून नाटकाचा विचार व्हायला हवा हे त्यांच्या अध्यापनातनं आणि त्यांच्या लेखनातनं वारंवार त्यांनी मांडलं. इतकंच नव्हे तर भरताची रंगभूमी, त्याचप्रमाणे पाश्चात्य पौर्वात्य रंगभूमी, लोकरंगभूमी यांचा साकल्याने विचार त्यांनी आपल्या संशोधनातनं आणि लेखनातनं मांडला. विदूषक, शोकांतिका, संस्कृत नाटकांचं सादरीकरण, संस्कृत नाटकांचा पूर्वरंग अशा कितीतरी विषयांवरील संबंधित विषयांवरील त्यांचे विचार सर्वस्वी नवीन होते. डॉक्टर भटांचा व्यासंग अफाट होता हे त्यांच्या समीक्षा वाचल्या की आपल्याला लक्षात येतं. शेक्सपियर, शॉ, हार्डी, इब्सन, टेनिस, विल्यम, सार्त्र इत्यादींच्या साहित्याचे परिशीलन, भाषा, धर्म, तत्वज्ञान, समाजशास्त्र, मानसशास्त्र, मानववंशशास्त्र, इतिहास, संस्कृत साहित्याचा विचार करता वैदिक साहित्य, तत्वज्ञान, धर्मशास्त्र, नाट्यशास्त्र, साहित्यशास्त्र इत्यादी अनेक विषयातील त्यांच्या अभ्यासांमुळे त्यांच्या समग्र समीक्षेत तुलनात्मक संदर्भ सातत्याने दिसतात आणि त्यांच्या समीक्षेला व्यापक परिमाण प्राप्त होतं. संशोधनात्मक आणि समीक्षात्मक लेखन करताना इतर संशोधक विद्वज्जनांबरोबरच प्रामुख्याने विद्यार्थी, संस्कृत प्रेमी रसिकच नाही तर संस्कृत अजिबात न जाणणाऱ्या वाचकांसाठीही साहित्य निर्मिती करणारी त्यांची दृष्टी दिसून येते. त्यामुळेच कितीतरी काळ अमृतसारख्या मासिकांमधनं ते सातत्याने लिखाण करत राहिले. वागीश्वरी हा त्यांचा लेखसंग्रह वाचलाच असेल बऱ्याच जणी. त्याच्या प्रस्तावनेत त्यांनी लिहिलंय की ज्यांना संस्कृत अजिबात येत नाही त्यांनाही संस्कृत साहित्याची ओळख सोप्या भाषेत आणि रसात्मक पद्धतीने करून देणं हा त्या पुस्तकाचा हेतू ते सांगतात. वैदिक थीम्स हेही त्यांचं पुस्तक प्रसिद्ध आहे, परंतु वेळेअभावी त्याविषयी बोलत नाही. अशा रीतीने चिकित्सक परंतु रसिक अशा या संशोधक लेखकांनी तर्कशुद्ध तरीही लालित्यपूर्ण, सैद्धांतिक तरीही सहज सुलभ, व्यापक तरीही सूक्ष्मग्राही अशा समीक्षेचं भटांच्या शब्दात सांगायचं तर बेमालूम मिश्रण केलं आहे. मात्र या समग्र साहित्यात खूप वेळा पुनरुक्ती दिसते. डॉक्टर भट नाटकांची समीक्षा करताना भरभरून बोलतात. इतकं की वाचकांच्या कल्पनेसाठी आणि स्वतंत्र विचारासाठी विशेष काही राहिलंय की नाही असं वाटतं. परंतु मराठी भाषिक रसिक, संस्कृत अभ्यासक, संस्कृत विद्यार्थी यांच्यासाठी साहित्याचं खूप मोठं आणि समीक्षेचं खूप मोठं दालन प्राध्यापक गोविंद केशव भटांनी आपल्यासाठी खुलं करून दिलं. मला वाटतं इथे प्रत्येकानेच आपल्या कॉलेजच्या दिवसात तरी भटांची सगळी पुस्तकं शब्दनशब्द वाचून काढली असतील. मला याविषयी शंकाच नाही, मीही त्यातलीच एक आहे. अजूनही भट सरांची पुस्तकं वाचायला मला तितकंच आवडतं. धन्यवाद.
खूप धन्यवाद मॅडम ह्या अभ्यासपूर्ण सादरीकरणासाठी. Actually, the topics related to all these 3 papers were very challenging to convert into a lucid presentation because they involved a number of information details, chronology, names of books, etc. But we have really witnessed the expertise of all the readers in making it systematic as well as lucid. So I once again thank all the readers, and now I request Chairperson Dr. Kala Acharya to give her comments.
Dr. Shakuntala Gavde, the experts on the dais and of the dais. I will be very brief and won't repeat what these experts have already mentioned. Dr. Manjusha Gokhale's paper on Mahamohopadhyay Vivid Mirashi was excellent review, a brief survey, brief but in-depth survey of all his works. What we always find, what we know that he, about Vidarbha Sanshodhan Mandal, when she has mentioned, I thought that although he has left his physical body in the form of Vidarbha Sanshodhan Mandal, he is still amongst us. When much has been already told about his work, especially his work about inscriptions is important. Why it is more important than his other works? Because it represents socio-cultural history of Maharashtra, of that particular region where he is doing his work on inscriptions. What we find that when we talk of the about the studies in inscriptions, we always find that more inscriptions which belong to dynasties, to polity, etc., they are often studied again and again. If you find the syllabus of any university, such inscriptions do find a place there. But when we talk about the regional inscriptions, then we find that there is a lacuna on the studies of these regional inscriptions, especially. Why it is so? Actually, if inscriptions, as it has been said that no study is static, every study in every field is always dynamic. For example, in inscriptions also, when we were thinking that the inscription at Shravanabelgola for Marathi, Chamundaraye Karvele is the oldest inscription about Marathi. And then we find that now the inscription at Akshi is more, it is prior to that. So this makes a great impact on the chronology, deciding the chronology of that particular regional socio-cultural history. And that is very important, because when we study history at that time, about the cultural history of that particular region is also very important. When it was talked about his work about different poets, especially Bhaubhuti and Kalidasa, etc., those things you already know. But I think that the way he studied those works, the works of those poets, is actually important. And that is the way, even now, that particular pattern has to be followed by the scholars in Sanskrit. Then there was a paper by Dr. Parinata Deshpande, and she has given a brief history of Dharma Shastra in detail. When about all the ancient writers on Dharma Shastra, she has given the names of the works there and what is the most important feature of that particular work. What I think is that recently, what is the recent great contribution in this field? It is not debatable at all that it is the contribution of Dr. P.V. Kane. But what does Dr. P.V. Kane himself thinks about the studies in Smritis or the nature of the Smritis? He says, I quote, the compilers of Dharma Shastra in Maharashtra, he doesn't speak about Maharashtra. Before that, I just tell that the compilers of Dharma Shastra in Maharashtra were not motivated by personal interests. They give verdict on what is right and what is wrong. Vishwamitra Smriti says, Yamarya kriyamanam tu samsantya agama vedinah sadharmo. Yo vigarhanti tam adharmam prachakshate. Now what P.V. Kane has observed in the history of Dharma Shastra, he says, they, that is the authors or compilers of Dharma Shastra, were guilty of the faults of raising hair-splitting arguments, divisions and subdivisions, and also of thinking that Rilata highlights the need of flexibility in the freedom of interpretation and freedom of choice of the practices. And it mentions alternative practices which are more related to philosophy, because these are withdrawal from worldly activities, practicing charity, renunciation, silence, meditation in silence, then reflection on the self, duties of a ruler, a code of mutual conduct, etc. Today, what do we need after studying all these Dharma Shastras? Do we think that they relate to our day-to-day life? If not, we need to incorporate insights in Dharma Shastra into our lives selectively. And how we have to select? Depending on their relevance and acceptance to modern life, and not only to modern life, to modern generation. Because they don't want to know how the rites, etc., are to be performed. They want to know why. Because how they will find anywhere in any translation of any Smriti. But why they are to be practiced, that they want to know. And it is a challenge for all of us to tell them, to explain them the why aspect of Dharma Shastra. Dr. Vaishali Dapke has presented a paper on G.K. Bhatt. Now, I also feel that Dr. G.K. Bhatt was a visionary, because today we all, the academicians in Sanskrit, we always actually lament over the decrease of the number of students in Sanskrit. And we never introspect why it is so. We always think that it is some policy of education, etc., etc. But we should be aware, and we all know actually, though we don't admit, research in Sanskrit was not accessible to those who are lovers of Sanskrit. it was accessible only to those who are experts in the field. So their research were meant for each other. Those who already know, they used to read the research papers and research about the research and used to appreciate that. Of course, I don't say that that type of research was not valuable. I don't say at all. It was important. Still, it was not inclusive of those lovers of Sanskrit who did not have that much knowledge of Sanskrit. So it was Dr. G.K. Bhatt who wrote for common readers and opened the field of Sanskrit for the lovers of Sanskrit, that too in his fluent style, and attracted a vast number of readers. Then what was already said, that about aesthetics, that particular aspect in his writing is more important. He guided the readers to enter into Kavya without clouding their understanding. And that is why now if we follow that particular pattern, then we need not worry about the dearth of students for our Sanskrit language. Just I want to say one thing, that nowadays also that pattern, I don't say that it is not followed at all by the experts in this field. Now we find that in newspapers also there are columns like stories from Upanishads. They also they also deal with the philosophy in Sanskrit through these stories, and that is actually to be appreciated by us. But sometimes what happens is that only Subhashitas are given, the Anvaya is given, and in Marathi their translation of those Subhashitas is given. So why this should, why I would say that effort is not so much commendable. Why? Because every Sanskrit Subhashit, it has not been written according to the level of the student. Whereas the stories, etc., they know what the students want, what the common reader wants, and in their own style, these stories are represented in a novel way. But whereas any Subhashita, if you take, then grammar part is there, which is not studied by students simultaneously. No, this particular vibhakti means this particular thing, etc. They can't do the Anvaya on their own. So instead of if we have to write about Subhashitas, then about its message, and then there should also be training in Sanskrit grammar. It was said about G.K. Bhatt that his dealing was more about the dramas, etc., and he did not appreciate so much grammatical reviews, that critical appreciation. But there I just want to have a difference of opinion, because if we read the commentaries on any drama, any kavya, what you find is that at the same place you find Vyutpatti of every word. You also find means not only Vyutpatti, then grammatical, it's division, what is the root, what is the pratyaya, etc. A student is not going to have Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi or Vyakaran Siddhanta Kaumudi in his hand when he reads poems or poetry, commentaries on poetries. So it is important for him. Simultaneously, he is studying grammar also, grounded in grammar, gradually, we can say. But at the same time, he is appreciating that particular kavya also. So I think that that particular trend is also as much important as the aesthetic approach. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I especially thank Dr. Shakuntala Gavde, the head department of Sanskrit, and all the listeners. And I congratulate all the paper presenters, Dr. Manjusha Gokhale, then Dr. Parinata Deshpande and Vaishali Dapke. Thank you very much.
Okay, but he was in Gujarat also, and he was an eloquent speaker. He had a very good command over English. When he spoke in English, he used to mesmerize us. And his edition of the Uttaramcharitra is excellent, unsurpassed in English. His edition on Uttaramcharitra is unsurpassed. It is unsurpassed. Hello, hello. So, you was very, I also heard him here also in Bombay when I was studying here. As you know that I was the oldest student, that is why I am here of this university. I used to call him, some other people also, that he was a small edition of Dr. Day. Of course, as students, I had never heard Dr. Day speaking, but the way in which Dr. G.K. Bhatt Sahab was speaking, excellent. He would carry us in his flow of the language. And this edition, particularly, I tell you, Uttaramcharitam in English. There are other also great scholars who have edited this Uttaramcharitam, particularly Mahamopadhyay, P.V. Kane, and then Saradarandan Ray, and there are other people also. Belurkar, there are other people also. But his edition, G.K. Bhatt Sahab edition, is excellent edition. And that Pridhu also has been translated into Gujarati. So I pay my tribute to my Guru.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much, sir, for your valuable inputs. You have a treasure of memories, we are sure, about a number of things. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Central Sanskrit University, New Delhi, Dr. Srinivas Varkhedi has arrived. A hearty welcome to you, sir. And now we have come to the tail end of this first session. Felicitation of paper readers. I request the chairperson to felicitate our readers. Dr. Manjusha Gokhale. Dr. Parinita Deshpande. Dr. Vaishali Dapke. So thus we have concluded the first section very successfully and on a very enthusiastic note. For session 2, I hand over the mic to Renuka.